Welcome to the Everything Building Envelope podcast. On this show, we discuss topics relating to the exterior building envelope, such as waterproofing, glazing, cladding, roofing, and more. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. For previous episodes, show notes, and bonus video content, check out our website, everythingbuildingenvelope.com. Now, here's your host for the Everything Building Envelope podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to our Everything Building Envelope podcast. I am Dan Johnson, Senior Consultant for GCI Consultants, and I will be your host today. I am really excited today to have as our guest, Todd Frederick, who is the owner and CEO of FreMarq Innovations, which is a highly performance curtain wall company located in central Wisconsin that was established in 2016. Prior to that, his company was FM Enterprises, which was established in 1996. I believe we have an interesting topic today, which is all about how FreMarq's technology helps with energy conservation, dollar savings, and reduces a building's overall carbon footprint. So Todd, let's start off by having you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your area of expertise, and then we can jump right into our podcast.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Well, I started in the curtain wall window industry in 1981. And I worked for a large window curtain wall manufacturer here in central Wisconsin until '96, at which time I started my first company, FM Enterprises, which primarily we did a lot of storefront doors, custom fabrication, and gradually built into the curtain wall market. And that lasted until about 2010, at which time I decided I was going to retire for a while, but that didn't last long. And in 2015, I decided it was time for someone to look at curtain wall framing systems primarily to provide a high performance thermal product. Up until that time, most people, architects, designers, would refer to the center of glass and really didn't take the account of the framing aspects into play. So, like I said, in 2015, I started to look at that. In 2016, I developed FreMarq Innovations, and that's what we do today. Is we look at framing. We provide highly thermal products to improve thermal performance of a building envelope and save money for building owners.
Okay, well, Todd, that's quite a history, and I know that as we talked a little bit earlier, you and I had worked together, in our former lives also, and I'm glad that we're able to talk again. So I know you had talked about this a little bit. Why is it important to have a high-performing building envelope?
Well, our research has found that buildings account for approximately 40% of all carbon emissions globally, which is a huge impact on our climate change. In addition, approximately $20 billion of energy leak out of commercial building windows each year. So both new and old windows, making this an economical issue for building owners. A high-performance envelope, which includes windows and curtain wall, will not only make a positive impact on our environment, but will also save money for building owners by reducing energy and maintenance costs, which I feel is a win-win for everybody.
Yep, I do agree with you 100%. But kind of the old adage out there, well, money is everything. So how has the industry responded to so far to high-performance products?
Well, there's been a mixed reaction. As I said, we started in 2016. And the response then, ranged from, we are already providing this to we don't need to worry about that yet, and those products are too expensive. And we found that architects, contractors, owners, basically design teams, did not understand the value of high performance and what it meant for the building. The few that did realize the savings and took advantage of it and are seeing a huge ROI on putting those products in their building. So today we still hear some of the same responses, but not as often. Although nationally, thermal codes have not improved to the extent we feel they need to, there are regional areas of the country that have. For instance, Massachusetts, New York City, Oregon, and Washington have all adopted thermal codes that, for commercial buildings that are more stringent than the ASHRAE recommended codes. This tells me the industry is starting to move in the right direction. But it's the old adage, it takes time for things to shift, but it's slowly going in the right direction.
Okay. I know you alluded to it a little bit just now, but traditionally, higher performance products, come at either a slightly higher or a far higher price. Is this true for the fenestration industry also, or are they virtually the same?
Well, I can't speak for all trades in the in the industry or in regards to an envelope, but as far as the commercial window and curtain wall industry, yes, traditionally high performance equaled higher pricing. However, we've worked extremely hard at driving our costs down, so we're relatively about the same, although slightly more. It's the old adage: if you want to, buy a car, Cadillac's going to cost more than, you know, you know, a Volkswagen, if you will. But you get what you pay for. But in the case of, high performance products that we provide, we found that although the costs are slightly higher, they're easily offset with the energy savings and the savings in HVAC sizing. The challenge we face is getting the building team, the architect, mechanical and contractors and general contractors to look at a building holistically to see where savings can be realized that will offset any added cost of the envelope. So if you put in a high performance envelope, you should be able to downsize your HVAC. So we have case studies that we have done that with.
Okay. Based on those case studies and your experience and research, what is some of the costs of not having high performance products or fenestration products in the building? Like, for example, will you have to have larger heat pumps, larger air conditioning or lighting and that type of thing?
Yeah, so when I talk about high performance, it's going beyond code, right? So our products perform anywhere from 30 to 60% above traditional products on the market. And so the cost of not putting that in is really, you're not going to realize the savings of the energy cost. We have done case studies where we have reduced energy spends on buildings of up more than 20 to 25,000 per month on large buildings. In addition to that, with high performance that we provide, you can downsize HVAC so that even in warm climates, you reduce tonnage for cooling, which typically is a bigger savings than savings on heat. So I think, the cost of not having high performance is, in addition to that, is you're still going to have the continued carbon emissions and energy leakage out, downgrade our global climate. And so I think not having it in there is detrimental to not only our environment, but also the building owners, and will continue to lose money out the window, and even the occupant comfort. With high performance, in cold climates, you can move right out to the window. Our framing stays at roughly room temperature. So not like the old days where you could keep your pot cold in the winter and coffee warm in the summer. So those to me are the biggest trade-offs by not doing this.
Okay. When you talked about, the aluminum framing being cold and hot, I remember back in my prior life doing the actual thermal testing, and that is definitely the case. I remember some of those horizontal and vertical members being very close to below freezing, during the cold temperatures.
Yeah, especially on those cold days in Minnesota and Wisconsin.
Exactly. So based on the U.S. codes and regulations, how have they been pushing for high performance products? And if you can kind of elaborate now, who are the main pushers?
Okay. Well, as you know, codes are decided on a state-by-state basis, right? So we have several authorities in the industry, the International Energy Conservation Code, IECC, and then, of course, ASHRAE. They'll make recommendations on, different climate zones where your thermal performance should be. But it's up to each individual state to adopt those. And as you know, as well as I do, Dan, sometimes the states aren't as up to date as we would like them to be. But as far as adopting codes, I think there are several areas in the country that are going beyond and doing a great job. I think of Massachusetts as one. They just adopted a new stretch code. The city of New York has stepped up because of carbon. And of course, the Northwest has done a great job in Seattle, Portland areas. So I think there's code changes coming in certain areas, and eventually I hope they spread throughout the country. But as far as where we are with codes today, a lot of the states are still back in the IECC 2012 and 2015, and they just came out with their new 21 version. So I think we're behind in a lot of areas, and I would like to see that move up.
Yeah, I was just at a seminar yesterday that they were talking about the Canadian energy codes, how they're becoming more and more strict, and they're almost by 2024, January 1 of 2024, that there's a possibility, or most products are going to have to be triple glazed in order to meet the energy codes. So based on your designs, with the additional thermal breaks that you have built in, is your design be able to work, around the triple glaze, or will your design, kind of adapt and work with triple glaze?
No, that's a great question. Our product line, we have what we call our Fort Max thermal barrier, and for instance, Massachusetts right now, they just adopted where every curtain wall has to meet an assembled U value of 0.25. So we can still reach that with 1-inch insulated glass. Everyone else needs to go to triple. So that's how well our systems perform. We can get into down the road as far as where our products are today, where we're going, but right now we're able to meet some pretty stringent code requirements, still utilizing 1-inch insulated glass.
Yeah, I can definitely see that as a benefit, and not only with the cost factor of going to triple glaze, but also just the additional weight factor and labor and everything else that goes along with that additional weight with the triple glaze. I see that as a huge benefit.
Absolutely, and in today's climate too is embodied carbon. So you got 2 lights of glass instead of 3, so it reduces embodied carbon of the product as well.
So based on your research and FreMarq's thoughts, do you feel like the industry is on track to meet the global carbon reduction targets that are out there?
This is only my opinion, but I believe I do not feel the industry is on track to meet the global carbon reductions that it wants to, as it relates to the facade. Now, I know they're doing a great job with other things like the heating system, solar, and those types of things, renewable energy, heat pumps. But when it comes to the facade, no, I don't believe they're on track because the codes just aren't moving fast enough or being aggressive enough for that to make an impact. For instance, in Wisconsin, the code requires an assembled U factor for fixed fenestration of 0.36. This hasn't changed for several years, and it's not expected to change for at least another year or two. But this U factor is equivalent to an insulated value of an R2.7. Well, that's not very good. And by decreasing the U factor to 0.32, which is where they're really trying to push it to, that's only an R factor of an R3.1. And I call these minor improvements. And to make any significant change, a more impactful increase needs to happen in the code. We really need to start providing windows and curtain wall products with U factors of 0.15 and lower in order to make an impact in carbon reductions.
If you get down to 0.15, can standard glass make that, or does it have to be VIG?
I can get there with standard glass. In fact, we just certified, I was going to go into that, but we just certified one of our products that has a U factor of 0.138, and it's done with thin triple glass.
Okay.
So we can get down there. That's where we are today.
Okay, so based on your previous comments, so it's basically the code officials or the codifiers, so to speak, are the ones that kind of push industry, and then industry needs to perform to the codes. So the majority of the manufacturers are just kind of waiting for, going status quo and waiting for the codes to push them to the next level.
Right, that's how I feel. I think it's like a three-legged stool. First, we need to really make an impact on the codes. And I know the authorities out there, ASHRAE, IECC, they make recommendations, and then they get pushed back from the industry because they feel it's too expensive, or it takes, some companies just can't get to those points. But then we also need the states to adopt codes that'll push the industry in those directions. So I think it's a three-legged stool, and I think we all need to do better.
Okay. Yeah, I know that you've kind of talked about this a little bit, but what do you feel is the biggest barrier when proposing high performance products to customers?
Okay, I run into two of them really. The first one has always been a challenge to overcome, is that getting the architects and designers to understand how the framing affects the overall performance. For a long time, the industry viewed the center of glass as the wall performance and didn't take into account really how the frame affected the glass performance. They also didn't really look at, the performance of the edge of glass, as we all know is much worse than the center of glass. So, although the industry is starting to understand this issue, manufacturers in the industry, the framing manufacturers, are struggling to provide products that can actually reduce this effect and thus create confusion for spec writers and designers. So, what I mean by that is there seems to be some confusion in the market right now is how do we specify a product with glass in order to meet these lower code requirements? So there's some education that has to be done. And then second biggest barrier we run into is the cost. Even though we have reduced our cost, they're still approximately about 5% more than a traditional code compliant product. But however, the savings they can realize in energy and the upfront HVAC reductions, will more than offset the small increase. The challenge is getting everyone to realize that and look at a project holistically.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and especially with the additional benefits, in order to reduce the HVAC and that type of thing, you can put less glazing in it in the building, but in the long run, that actually reduces user comfort and with daylighting, it's a big trade-off there. You want as much light as possible, but you want that to be high-performing daylight.
Absolutely. Yep. We don't want to reduce the glass in a building. If we want to help architects put more in a building and be efficient doing it.
Yeah, and based on my experience, I agree with that. It just has more healthful benefits, for the people in the building also. So what's the next big step for FreMarq in terms of high-performing products?
Okay. Well, as I said before, we've already improved our product performance level down to a U factor of 0.138. Which is just like a R7.2. That's available today. We're just finishing R&D on our next release that will provide an assembled curtain wall, both unitized and stick, that will provide a U factor of 0.098 assembled. And this is an R10 assembly. And I believe it's the first to be available in the market. And we made that our goal 10 years ago, and we're going to complete it in less than 8. That particular product will involve VIG.
Okay.
I think that's the next step in glass performance, and we're pretty excited about being able to work with, I believe they will be the first domestic manufacturer of VIG, and it'll be market ready the first quarter of next year.
Okay. And for those, I apologize for our listeners. I know I said it, and Todd has said it too. But VIG is vacuum insulated glass. It's basically the next technology. It's been out there for a while, but mostly in Europe and Asia. But it's the next technology in glass that will enable higher performing thermal products here, thermal and acoustic products here in the States.
Yep, you're absolutely right. I think that's going to be the next step, and it's going to be, I believe it'll become very economical to use as well. And the reason I like VIG is we can make it a hybrid. You glaze it into a 1-inch unit, and we get better performance yet. Or you can use the VIG itself. My only concern is in the testing that we've done is that the glass edge has a very poor conductance, if you will. So that's one of the things that we're working on here. But it's great. I think it's a great opportunity for the market. And like I said, first quarter of next year, we're going to be available with it. So we're excited about it.
All right, Todd, we're coming to the end of our podcast here. Is there anything else that you would like to let us know that we haven't touched on in the fenestration industry? Just kind of words of wisdom, insight, or anything like that you would have for us?
Well, as you know, Dan, we could talk all day, but but one of the things I would really like your listeners to understand and realize is that the framing in the commercial market, it plays a huge impact on the assembled value or the assembled performance of any curtain wall or window. And I stress to please take that into account when you're looking at a design. We've been working on this now since 2016, so we have a tremendous amount of experience in the thermal performance of walls. And we look at everything from, the U values or R values, if you will, to the condensation. We do dew point analysis, and just recently we really started looking into the performance of the spandrel areas. So that's the next area of concern, I guess you could call it. But
Mhm.
that's where the market is moving now, is really looking at that performance.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, the spandrel areas is keeping the condensation out, and that's a whole nother animal there.
Yeah, it is. It's all new software, and so it's going to be a long game to get to there, but it's something that needs to be done.
All right. Well, Todd, I want to thank you for our conversation. And if any listeners want to reach out to you or your team, what's your website address and the best way for them to contact you?
All right. Well, our website is www.fremarq, FREMARQ, innovations.com. And the best way to reach out and get in touch with me would be probably email, which is Todd, TODD, Frederick, FREDERICK, @fremarq.com. And our office number is 715-842-6842.
All right. Thank you, Todd. And listeners, we also invite you to take a further look at our very own GCI Consultant services on our website at www.gciconsultants.com, or you can also reach GCI at 877-740-9990 to discuss any of your building envelope needs. Thank you again, Todd, for our conversation, and I look forward to talking with you and our listeners the next time on our Everything Building Envelope podcast. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks for joining us today. Please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher. For more information on the Everything Building Envelope, previous episodes, show notes, bonus video content, and much more, check out our website, everythingbuildingenvelope.com.